Yes, so like I was saying, thank you all for being here. So many amazing and inspiring community members in this space, and that's really what the Growing Nonprofit series is all about, is highlighting the amazing work that's happening in our community. And we have the chance to learn today from Sean and Braden about their leadership, and also just bringing together leaders who are genuinely putting in the work in our community spaces at the grassroots level, and creating inspiring change in our communities. So thank you all for coming together today. Before we start, and as we gather today for this Growing Nonprofit series, I do want to acknowledge that we are meeting on Treaty 4 territories, which are the traditional lands of the Cree, Anishinaabe, Dakota, Lakota, and Nakota peoples, as well as the homeland of the Métis. I want to acknowledge that this land acknowledgement isn't in and of itself an act of reconciliation, but that in the spirit of co-designing and centering lived experience, like we're doing today in this session, I want to recognize that community-led solutions have long been practiced by Indigenous peoples on this land, who have shared knowledge and built relationships and who have worked collectively for generations. And as we discuss inclusive program designs today, I hope that we can commit in an act of reconciliation to learning from these traditions and amplifying the voices of people with lived experience, the expertise that those people have from their lived experience, and working towards equity in the nonprofit sector. And I hope that today, as we work and learn and discuss and share together, that the principles of respect and reciprocity and justice are kind of centered in our conversations as we strive to build programs that honor the wisdom and leadership of those who have been most impacted. So thank you all for being here today again. And we're thrilled to have Sean Fraser from the John Howard Society. I think it's executive director, or I don't know, is it CEO of the John Howard Society? I don't want to like underplay your title, Sean, but the leader of the John Howard Society of Saskatchewan. And then we have Braden Lara, who's also here joining us, who is a member of the youth advisory team at John Howard. And just from my conversations with both Sean and Braden, I've learned so much about the community-driven and I guess bottom-up youth-led and otherwise community-led, I think, initiatives that the John Howard Society has developed. And I think that this is, again, I love through this series to highlight the work that's happening locally so that we can profile the folks that are doing that and doing that really well. So I'm going to hand it over just in a moment to you, Sean. But before I do want to say the Growing Nonprofit series, this is, I can't remember what number we're on, but I know many of you have been here out throughout the winter semester here. And we're so thrilled to offer the Growing Nonprofit series in partnership with the South Saskatchewan Community Foundation. And that allows us to also support the organizations with a small honorarium for their work and their time. So we're really grateful for that partnership as well. So without further ado, I will pass it over to you, Sean, to get us started.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Very grateful to be here. Thanks for the introduction, Colleen, and nice to see some familiar faces. Yeah, things have changed. We're still post-COVID. It seems like a while ago, but yeah, there's a lot of people on this call that I'm very happy to see that I maybe haven't seen some of you in person for a long time. So glad we can meet virtually again and hope everyone's doing well. My name is Sean Fraser. I'm the CEO of the John Howard Society of Saskatchewan. Regardless of my title, I still can't figure out Zoom. Every time I'm on here, I'm scrambling to like get the mic on or whatever, but here we are. So yeah, a little bit I'd like to share with you. First, I'd like to tell you about the John Howard Society, just a little bit of the history of the organization, what our mandate is and what our program, what the real work actually looks like. And then I'd like to tell you a little bit of my thoughts just to start the conversation about client input, client involvement, and sort of two different models that we see commonly in the nonprofit sector, which is one is top down and some of the reasons for that and some of the struggles with that. And another is really grassroots, sort of bottom up, and some of the challenges we see with that, but also some of the opportunities we see with that. And then I'm really excited to hand the mic over to our friend and colleague, Braden Lara, who's on the call here. So Braden is a member of our youth advisory team at the John Howard Society. And I'm just going to not steal Braden's thunder because he's got some really more exciting stuff to talk to you about than I do. So I'm just sort of the opening act, and then we'll hear from Braden in a few minutes here. So yeah, the John Howard Society, we've actually been active in Saskatchewan for more than 65 years. We celebrated our 65th anniversary, I think it was 2 summers ago. So a pretty long-standing nonprofit. We're part of the National Federation, the John Howard Society of Canada. So we have a national body that we're federation, sort of like Canada's a federation made up of provinces. The John Howard Society of Canada is a federation made up of representatives from more or less representative from each province is the short version. At the heart of what we do is we work with men who are exiting the justice system. So that's sort of our traditional mandate, although I'll say in medium term and short term years, we've really grown that mandate to fit sort of anything involved with justice. Some of that's after the fact, and some of the best work we do is actually working with people before they hit the justice system, to avoid contact with the justice system in the first place, which of course is harder to measure, but I would argue more important work. So in broad strokes, well, what the organization looks like, numbers fluctuate, but at any given time, we have around between 160 and 190 employees across 4 locations. We have offices in Regina, Saskatoon, Moose Jaw, and Prince Albert. And at any given time, we're delivering around 30 contracts, mostly government contracts, but some of it's through philanthropic means and private sources and that sort of thing. I mean, private grants, that sort of thing. But for the most part, we're delivering government contracts across the province. 3 broad categories. The first being justice. So those sort of traditional justice things. We run a 1-800 number for inmates and their families if they want to contact us to ask a question, something simple, even just someone to talk to. We have a 1-800 number that they're able to call and either talk to a person directly or also leave a message and then we get back to them. That could be, again, inmates wanting, they're about to be released and they want to find some information. It could be an inmate's family that just wants to know about like what's happening inside, and we can kind of act as a conduit for that. I'll say one of the challenges of that program is that we have more or less one staff who's answering that phone. And there's at any given time, there's several, potentially a couple thousand inmates who might want to access it. So, we're not able to get to, we have to be careful how we advertise it because we want to be a good service for people, and also just the volume of calls that are coming to us. We have to triage a bit about how we're able to help people. But it's a very important service and accessed on a regular basis by many inmates and their families across the province. We also offer housing. We have post-release housing programs. I'll say each looks a little different, but across our 4 locations, we have some housing now available for adults or young adults who are leaving the justice system who can come and live with us, which is a really important. Of course, our end goal is community safety. That's part of it, and people when they leave prison not coming back. Trying to reduce recidivism, and a key part of that, a key ingredient in the recipe is making sure people have safe and adequate housing. So we branched into that in the last few years. Some of you might have heard we also do quite a bit of advocacy. We're generally in the media a fair bit. One interesting one I'd like to share was just a recent court case we had, the John Howard Society of Saskatchewan versus the government of Saskatchewan, that actually ended up bouncing all the way up to the Supreme Court of Canada. And on March 14th, we actually just found out that we won that case against the government of Saskatchewan. And what we were talking about was the threshold for guilt or innocence for prison disciplinary processes. So if someone's in prison and they're charged with an offense, let's say that 2 people get into a fight, and the guy in the top bunk, well, it's like him, he has a history of starting fights, and the guy in the bottom bunk, well, we're not sure who started, but we'll punish the guy in the top bunk because on a balance of probabilities, it was likely him that did it. So in a civil context in Canada, that is the threshold, for guilt or innocence. But in a criminal context, the threshold, and what we argued should be the threshold within prisons, is that you're innocent until you're proven guilty. That happens like that in the federal system, but not in the provincial systems across Canada. So we made that argument. We picked a case that we thought made that point. And again, lost at the first 2 rounds, but eventually got to the Supreme Court of Canada and we won. So now we'll wait to see how it rolls out, but we think that's going to have a real impact on Canadian law and the lives of not just prisoners, but also guards across the country. Because people might not be aware of this, but prison's not a real cheery place for the people that live there, but it's also not a real cheery place for the people that work there. So we feel that having clearer rules around something like that not only does it enshrine the rights of inmates, it also helps, we hope, kind of cheer up the environment for the guards too. So not a perfect solution. Obviously, it's still a prison, it's still a prison, let's not kid ourselves. But we think that this is one small step that can help make the prison environment kind of safer and more equitable, not equitable, sorry, safer and more just and humane for everybody. And also ultimately lead to safer streets because you know, we're always thinking about how to get people out of prison. Once they're out of prison, how to make them not come back. And we think that this, has some, is part of a bigger picture that ties into that. Okay, so yeah, I'll just stop there on the justice front of things. Another pillar of the work we do is around youth housing and youth supports. So across Saskatchewan, we run actually 8 youth homes, one in Moose Jaw, 4 in Regina, or sorry, 4 in Saskatoon and 3 in Regina. So those youth homes, generally they're filled with youth who are the wards of the state. You know, their parental situation has been turned over to the province, and that then the province has contracted the John Howard Society, along with many other partners, to provide a home-like environment for these youth. That's the basic model. We also, one of those homes is like an emergency receiving shelter in Saskatoon, so sometimes it's sort of more immediate than long-term. But I'll say it's important work, and also when we think about our justice mandate, youth who are part of that system, part of the social, the foster system, really in Saskatchewan, Canada, are at so much higher rates of having contact with the justice system later, that we think it's really important work to provide that home-like environment before they have contact with the justice system. Some of those youth might have had contact already, but that's not what you need to come live with the John Howard Society. You have to be a ward of the state, and we'll try our best to provide a stable home setting through those really important years, through those teen years from like 12 or 13 to 18 generally. And I'll say this, that it's a bad system that needs to get burnt down eventually. It's actually the remnants of the residential school system. About 80% of youth that are in that system in Saskatchewan are Indigenous, and the system is bad and needs to change. The fact is, it exists. So John Howard, we're one of those providers that provides that care, and we're always thinking about how we can do a better job of it, just through a human lens and also through a decolonization lens. So it's hard work, but it's important work, and the John Howard Society is part of that system and trying to do what we can to make it better from the inside. What those homes look like, generally they're 5 youth to a home, and like I say, it's our goal to try to provide a home-like environment. So that means meals and fresh sheets and evening activities, weekend activities, trying our best to make sure that those youth have a quality experience when they're with us. I also say that we along with providing housing, we also have a program called Supportive Independent Living. So it's a contracts with the provincial government to provide transition from youth who are in care to youth that will someday, hopefully have their own career path and families or whatever they choose to do, their own independence. It's a transitional kind of bridge program to help that transition. Important work, and it happens across the province. One of our homes is also Lulu's Lodge. Some of you will have heard of this. It's a home in Regina. The origins of it were before my time at John Howard Society. We had a couple key staff. I'll point to Tana Young and Lauren Gill, who were really important in getting that program off the ground. And the reality is that the representation of queer and trans youth in Canadian homeless populations is way out of proportion. A big chunk of youth who are homeless are part of the LGBTQ2S plus community in Canada. So the John Howard Society, we saw that need, and we actually started Lulu's Lodge without a budget. We just saw there's a need for this. So we started a home. We just rented a home from Namron Housing, an important partner here in Regina, and got it rolling. And since that time, we've been able to purchase a home with support of Sask Housing and many community-minded donors, businesses, and individuals across the city and the province. And now we have a home that I would say it's unique, but the end goal is for it to be provide the same level of service as a government-funded youth home. It's unique. Again, it's serving a particular population, but the end goal is that it's that same level of care. And I would say that we made great strides, and a lot of important work happens there. And we're dealing with people that are coming from difficult situations and trying to provide a stable, home-like environment for them to make it through their teen years until they can blossom and be their own person as an adult. And I'm just canceling a call on the other line here. Okay, well, I'm gonna probably pick up my pace here because I'm taking a long time. I'll speak to another pillar that the John Howard's involved in, and that is youth mental health. So about 2.5 years ago, we partnered with the Department of Health, Saskatchewan Department of Health, to provide youth integrated services So think of this, that youth mental health is not a new invention, right? It's been around as long as we've had society, probably there's been youth mental health issues. But it's only recently in Canadian society that we kind of recognized it. You know, we've recognized that youth mental health is its own thing with its own causes, and it's real and it's here, and we need to deal with it. Well, the health region has the resources. I mean, health in Saskatchewan, about half the provincial budget goes to health, actually, is my understanding. So they have the resources, but they don't necessarily have the connections in the community. So we were, through a competitive process, we won a bid to help facilitate that. So we act as kind of the last link in the bureaucracy for the health funding around youth mental health, some of it. And then we have a board that helps decide, community oversight committee that helps decide where the funding goes. And right now we're in the midst of opening 4 community drop-in spaces across the province. So that's in partnership with the YMCA of Regina and Moose Jaw, the YWCA of Regina in Regina, Partners Family Services in Humboldt, and Sturgeon Lake First Nations on Sturgeon Lake First Nations. And you can picture this as sort of like a drop-in center with a nurse. Okay, there's a ping pong table, there's a nurse. So if one of us or someone we loved was having a mental health crisis, the last place that I would want to go is the emergency room. I don't know if you guys have been to the emergency room lately, but it's crowded. It's just difficult, and it's full of people that are just having one of their worst days in their life. You know, so instead of youth having to go there to find services, we're providing a for youth by youth design space that's comfortable, that's available, and youth and their family can go there and just help sort things out. Anything from a severe mental health crisis right now and you need to talk to a nurse, or you need immediate access to a counselor. We're working on that you can talk to a counselor. If you're youth in Saskatchewan, you can talk to a counselor like right now. To maybe you just want to come check it out and you're graduating grade 12 and you want to find out what there is for scholarship opportunities out there next year. We can help you with that too. So we're working on that. So those are kind of the 3 pillars. How are we doing for time, Colleen? Geez, I don't even know how much I've talked
You're
here.
good. You're
Okay.
good. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to keep moving here because I want to get to the real show. Again, I'm just the opening act here for Braden. So moving right along. I guess today's topic, like what we're talking about is, what works and what doesn't for client engagement when it comes to designing projects, And I would say in my experience, I'm hopefully kind of mid-career, I guess. So I haven't been here. I don't have as much experience really as some of the people on this call, but in my experience, I've worked at. I was the executive director at Carmichael Outreach for a few years. I worked at the YMCA for a few years, and then I've worked here at the John Howard Society for a few years. That's roughly my nonprofit career, outside of lots of different volunteering opportunities here and there. The point being that a common thread I've seen in all these different kind of angles I've got to look at the nonprofit sector from is that programs start from 2 places. They either start at the top and they go down, or they start at the bottom and they go up. And starting at the top, sometimes that's necessary. Sometimes when we're working with big systems, again, talking about health, talking about the federal government, talking about some bigger, maybe private entities or philanthropic entities, the fact is they just have to be a bit top down because that's the nature of a system and a society, and that's just how it has to work. The problem is that oftentimes, sometimes it doesn't work. Not to say it maybe doesn't work at all, but there's inherent problems. I think of it as like people come up with a solution and then they're trying to find a problem to fit the solution, and that they might have got it right, but they also might not have got it right, because human intuition, it's important. We should follow our intuition, but we also need to remember that intuition isn't always right. Like oftentimes what we think should be right isn't actually how the world works. And we see that lots of times with funding and program development, that if it starts at the top and it works down, that again, you might get it right. There might be things to celebrate, but you also might get it wrong. Versus when we can take programs and we actually find out what the problem is first, and then we build the solution from the problem. That's just such a more surefire way to make sure that the solution matches the problem. Okay. So some examples of, we'll maybe get into some examples later about where we've seen that go wrong, but some examples where I've seen it go right. I mentioned like Lulu's Lodge was really not based on a grant opportunity. It started from seeing a need in community of a lot of queer youth in Regina that didn't have tailored services, that didn't have a place to stay, and were homeless. So I think there's so many positive examples. It doesn't mean it's not messy along the way, because you're dealing with people that are dealing with very complicated situations, and complicated personal situations and family situations. So the goal is not, the goal is always to keep clients and staff safe. It doesn't mean that like beyond that, it doesn't mean that everything's always perfect, but it does mean that the services match hopefully what is needed. I think of the IYS model, the Integrated Youth Services, which is branded as Home Base across Saskatchewan. If you've maybe seen that brand, it's just been rolled out in the last few months here. That project is led by a youth co-design team, we say. So a lot of the crucial decisions, we have a group of paid youth actually that people applied. We had a public process to pick who the youth were going to be, but we have youth from across the province that are helping shape, like, what do those drop-in centers actually look like? Not what does an old fart like me think that the young kids are into these days, but what do youth know that they want to see in those spaces? So I think that is another example that we can maybe talk a bit more about that works well. And then one I'm really excited about, which is I'm about to hand over to Braden here, is the youth advisory team. So I just want to give the highest level piece of it because Braden knows it better than I do. But a while ago, we were talking to the provincial government about this idea. I should say we heard about this idea of there was going to be a paid youth advisory team that would advise the Ministry of Social Services on crucial decisions. And I'll be completely honest, guys, my first response was a big eye roll. I'm like, oh, great, another committee. Like, if you want to do nothing, like, put a committee on it, and then it looks like you're doing something, but actually doing nothing. So I was a bit cynical about it, and I have been proven wrong because actually the youth advisory team is full of awesome young people who are ready to kick butt, not are ready to kick butt, who are kicking butt already. And actually they've had some big influences on real decisions. So with that, that's the end of the opening act. And I'm going to hand it over to our main man here, Braden Lara, who's actually part of that youth advisory team. And Braden, take it away.
How's it going? Um, Honestly, when I first heard of YAD, it was mentioned to me by one of like the John Howard staff, and they told me that they thought I'd be a good fit for the program. I didn't know what it was. I didn't really want to be a part of it, but then I thought about it, decided, and then I finally like I took a look, and then after like my first couple meetings, I started to enjoy the meetings, and it made me feel like I was kind of doing something that could, help a lot of people that face similar situations as me. And it just made me, feel very important. Like it's still helping a lot of like decisions being made, helping a lot of people like benefit. Um, Honestly, it's very positive, you know, thing I do with my time. Honestly, John Howard, the team helps a lot with social services because there's a lot of stuff that aren't being like needs that aren't being met. um Lots of like stuff that isn't actually being like done, and the fact that we get together and talk about those things, it really helps some situations and people like build a plan to make changes. But yeah, um the most the most valuable thing about YAT is the time I spend with people that I can call my friends now, and building an action plan to help make a change. um Giving some people a voice, makes me feel good knowing that I make a positive impact. Nothing can beat that feeling, really. um at John Howard, there's like Sean said, there's a drop-in center. At the drop-in center, it's just like a safe place, I guess, for like youth, some youth that could be facing homelessness, or anybody that just needs a place to go. They got laundry, washrooms, kitchen for food, a gym, games too. You can come in, do homework after school. There's a TV there, you can watch TV, relax. There's even a culture room for anybody that wants to get connected with their culture. um, John Howard staff, they also help connect you with different resources like the food bank, housing, jobs. Anybody can go there if they have nowhere to go, and they can just get connected with certain resources that they think that they need. Um, Me personally, the John Howard staff, they help me with a bunch of things, like even small things like rides to appointments, stuff like that. They've been very helpful. So, my experiences, they can tell you that firsthand that they're really good people and very positive, and they help influence your decisions. They push you to do better, very positive over there. The original goal for the drop-in center was to make it 24 hours, to like help youth with homelessness, but that's in the future. Obviously, it's not like currently happening, but it'll will be there. We'll be there. We had a few meetings with social services in the past where we just like pointed out certain things that we thought could be changed in the system. Currently, like they're currently working to change the things. Um, I think sometime within the next couple months we're gonna be doing a roundtable where we meet up with like directors in social services, and we just note some of like the issues that are going on, and hopefully that they decide to make a change based on the stuff that we tell them. um because like the stuff that we did with Yat, the stuff that we helped like make change in social services was like just basic stuff like either getting youth connected with the resources, or getting them like making them more aware of the rules, making them more aware of like stuff that they're entitled to, you know, just helping them make it so they're not like stuck, like so everybody has at least little bit of hope so they can hopefully do something productive. But um because Yat like has a bunch of individuals who have been in the ministry or involved in like certain situations, it helps a lot because everybody has like certain lived experiences, so everybody can just come together and design a game plan to help like everybody in the long run. And that's really helpful because there's a lot of different situations. Obviously not everybody's going to be going through the same thing, right? So we can all come together and discuss everything that we think should be changed. um Honestly, yeah, that's about it. That's it. That's all I got. Just the basics, I guess. But, yeah.
Thank you so much, Brayden, for sharing. And I think it's really inspiring to me. Like you've noted a lot of things that I think are very inspiring, but you've mentioned talking about the power of the YAT team meeting with government, and then government actually responding with policy to your recommendations. And so I think this is exactly why I wanted to highlight this program, because I think both Sean's kind of insight into the folks that he's serving and the work of the John Howard, and the ability to, bridge that government relations gap. And I think, Sean, did you say that this was actually a ministry-led initiative as well? And so maybe I'll let you speak to that. But also just, Brayden, you talked specifically about having the diverse youth at the table, because you said that everyone has their own unique lived experience, and bringing those diverse perspectives to understand the barriers and then connect youth to resources, it is really exciting and powerful. And I just, yeah, really want to congratulate you for the depth of insight that you have in that space, and your willingness to step up and be a leader and inform. So I think that's really exciting. But maybe what I can do first is open it up to the floor. I do have kind of a few questions that I thought I would moderate for Brayden and Sean. And then I thought we could go into a little bit of a discussion with folks who may have their own kind of like program designs for folks with lived experiences, or who want to have that, or like ask more questions about how to do that. And then of course the complications of how do we navigate this all with funding models. But before I kind of go into that moderated space, is there anyone that wants to ask a question to either Jordan or Sean? I'm sorry, Brayden or Sean? I was looking at Jordan and then I said your name, Jordan. Sorry, Brayden or Sean?
Thank you, Braden. I'm so impressed with what you're doing. I heard you say, hopefully the government will meet. Will do what we're asking. Have there been any examples where they didn't? Besides the court case to Ottawa?
When I think about it, I don't think the stuff that we always mentioned were like crucial, like things that need to be changed, not like just minor inconveniences. So like most of the stuff that we mentioned, it's either being changed or they're working towards changing it. Um, yeah, so far we haven't like really had any issues with that because we don't mention we don't really mention stuff that isn't that big of a inconvenience, you know?
More systemic suggestions, I think, right?
Mm. Sean, did you have something to say?
Yeah, I can speak to that, I think. First off, Terry, great to see you. We used to see each other all the time, and I haven't seen yours, so really nice to see you
Yeah.
looking well. I would say that two things that I can point to that have, or one that's changed and one that's in the works is the drop-in space. You know, that was actually like the framework what came from top down, right? Which again, sometimes top down's the right thing because that's just how it works. But the framework for these youth advisory tables came from the province. The initial feedback that has happened already is the existence of these drop-in centers. The idea for that actually came from the Table of Youth, and also in the last provincial budget, which was here last week or 2 weeks ago, last week. We found out that the province is actually also going to fund some transitional housing, which again, I mean, transitional housing is not a new idea, but that was a recommendation from the YAT committee that they fund youth transitional housing across the province. A bit of a tweak on how we've done it before. So again, a couple positive examples of real changes. I would also say, without trying to paint too rosy a picture of it, one of the reasons that we want to include youth in decision making is because most good revolutionary ideas, most change comes from young people, you know, and I think that those are two really important asks that are doable. And my hope would be that we get to a place where the Yats are asking for. There's so many changes that need to happen in the system, you know, that there will be some that won't be met. That's actually what we want. We want a bit of tension, not tension in a fighting way, but tension in a, hey, we see what needs to change. That change is going to be led by the people who are younger and have more energy, and also are the benefactors or closer to being the benefactors to what that change actually looks like. So here's one that the YAT hasn't brought forward yet. I don't think so, anyways. But that I would love to see. Again, not on the YAT, but I just see the need. Is the rates we pay for food for youth in care? It's about $10 a day, $10 and change, I think. And that's one, again, not on the YAT, so I'm not trying to steal the narrative here. But yeah, we should really, in my mind, when the government makes its budget, the first line item should be youth in care. And then when we get to the bottom, we should see how much we have left over for highways and all this other very important stuff. But in my mind, youth in care should be the very top priority for the province, because they're actually like, they're not children of the province, but they're in the care of the province. That very important bond between parents and child has been put into the care of the government. So yeah, there's lots of examples of funding where I could go on about what that looks like for youth in care. Again, food would be a great place to start. But it's not just all about money, you know, it's about structure. And I think that's one of the advantages of YAT, is that sometimes the bureaucracy, again, I'm not like, we're part of that, you know, I'm part of that bureaucracy working in delivering this stuff. So not to throw stones at anybody, don't hate the players, hate the game, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But sometimes there's things that the bureaucracy can't untie on its own just because they don't have the means for that. And I think an organization like YAT, an entity like YAT, can help put the pressure that's needed to untie some of those things. Again, some it's about money and some it's not. So I'll, Terry, thanks for your question. I'll maybe just stop there. So thanks.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Does anyone else have something that they'd like to ask? If not, I have a couple questions that I'd like to ask. Braden, I suppose if I could ask you, I know you said at first you were kind of like, oh, maybe like, should I join this? And maybe I shouldn't. And I suppose what were the factors that encouraged you to decide to join a youth advisory table? And what has made you excited about staying and continuing that work as a young person?
Well, my mentor John Howard was mentioning to me that we could because she knows a little bit of my situation and how, like I've been treated a little bit unfairly, but she encouraged me to do it because she just basically told me that kids in the future wouldn't have to go through what I had to, and they'd be more aware of their like rights and a bunch of stuff. So I decided to check it out. And on top of that, I'm sure like it also helps out a lot because it's a paid programming, right? So I can eat at the end of the day, it's it helps out. And it just it's a good feeling, knowing that I'm doing something to help people in the future, right? Make decisions and kind of like, you know, set some things down, and it just makes me feel positive, it makes me feel, like I'm doing something good.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Well, and I think you made an important point here, which is compensation for young people who are providing that expertise, because it is really your expertise that you're sharing, right, from your lived experience. Sean, could I ask you kind of how you folks went about, or in this specific circumstance and in others, in, designing meaningful co-designed projects where you're able to compensate partners, or how has that looked like in different settings or different programs at John Howard, and in your experience working in community?
Yeah, great. I think that's one of the key things is about the compensation. And again, one of the weird things in the nonprofit sector is that often the framework of how what you're allowed to work in with is dictated to you in a contract, right? Private sector, not that private sector is doing a lot of this type of work, but that's one of the difference between nonprofit and for-profit is for-profit has a little more flexibility about how they can, or a different type of flexibility about how they can pay people. In this case, we're lucky that the grant we worked out had funding to pay people in it. So ideally, that should always be the case. I'm not saying it can always be the case, but it should always be the case. It's sort of a tie, and I see Colleen was so kind to slip us the questions beforehand. So I'm just kind of looking down your list here, and it sort of ties into me to this next question was about what does genuine co-design look like, So ideally, the paid piece is very important. And I think part of the reason is that really a lot of the issues that we're talking about, it has one common, pretty simple, I don't want to say simple, but pretty basic ingredient, and that's poverty. When we talk about, I think about like four big issues that sort of affect people in society. It's like physical health issues, mental health issues, addictions, and sorry, what am I forgetting here? Physical health, mental health, addictions, and trauma. That's it, and trauma. Those issues aren't, they're not, somewhere there's a lottery bin, right? and people are picked out of, the names are picked out of who's affected by physical health, mental health, addictions, and trauma. There's no real, I would say, I mean, there are biases, but it's not, here's what I'm trying to say. Those aren't poor people issues, But what happens is that when people have money, they can deal with those issues. When there's someone who has like a mental health issue in a family, but I'll say not just money, but wealth, right? So wealth can be a strong family, or it can be cash, or it can be education. There's all these different types of wealth. And if somebody has an issue, again, physical health, mental health, addiction, or trauma, lots of times they're dealt with. It's a rough patch, and people get through it because they have those supports around them. And where we see it fall into, kind of cascade into people put in really bad situations. Really, what's missing is the people not having the resources to fix that. So on top of like all the good things that'll come out of this, the recommendations from this committee, being able to pay people, and again, it's not a full-time job, just to be clear, they're not making wads and wads of money, but a little bit of money can go a long way. So like the opportunity to get paid is actually a big part of what makes this important to people. Even though, again, it's not, I don't want to confuse anybody that these guys are getting the golden handcuffs or something like that. Like they're being fairly compensated for their time, but it's their times we're getting a good deal, let's say that, or the province is getting a good deal. Just to riff off that for a minute, I'll say like what does genuine co-design look like? I would say that we have a real bias about, we have a fear of making mistakes. And actually, we need to remember that actually making mistakes is an important part of a creative process. There's some mistakes you can't make. Like you always have to try your best to keep clients and staff safe. Don't make those mistakes. It's not to say it's never going to happen, but make sure that you're always keeping that in mind, that your clients and your staff are going to be safe and well. Okay. But as far as other types of mistakes, like part of the reason why I think we have a culture that's so adverse to like peer design or co-design or youth input is that people think, oh, like, well, they'll make mistakes. And the reality is like they will make mistakes, but you have to make mistakes to learn from them, you know? And so if we don't give it up, you know, if that's about youth, if that's about Indigenous communities, if that's about, you know, a gender divide or anything like that, like if you don't give people a chance to make mistakes, how are they supposed to ever learn from the mistakes that they don't make? You know, you have to be willing to make mistakes. Okay, I would say another like spin-off of this, you know, the YAP committee I'll talk about specifically, is just board experience. It sounds kind of boring, but that's actually really important. Like there's a lot of boards that make this society run, you know, whether that's, yeah, some of it's, a bit of it's for profit, but in Canada and Saskatchewan, a lot of it's like nonprofit work, right? It's like being on the board of your local hockey rink or whatever, you know, in a small town, or like a nonprofit, or like even government, you know, our whole government's run by lots of committees, you know, there's crowns and that sort of thing. And just giving young people the chance to have a bit of board experience. It's hard if you have no board experience to get on a board. When you have a little bit of board experience, like Braden, I don't know what boards you're going to be on in life, but I suspect that it's going to be a long string of boards that you're going to be on to like give back to your community. Again, what that looks like, I have no idea, but you got a little bit of resume experience and real life experience that when you're ready to get on the next board, for a lot of people, that's part of how they get back, you know. Also with that board experience is just understanding how systems work, how your own rights work, how the law works. So I think hopefully that's a spin-off of beyond like the good recommendations that are coming out of this committee. It's like a chance for a fairly big group of youth and a rotating group of youth, because we have people aging out, new people coming on, a chance to just get some of those basic skills that are hard to break into. Again, once you have a bit, the next step's a lot easier than the first step. I would also say, we mentioned about compensation, and I would also say, thanks for your patience, guys. We're bouncing all over the place here. But another thing that I've heard come up is about imposter syndrome. Has everyone heard of imposter syndrome? I don't, but yeah, imagine, has anyone ever experienced a bit of imposter syndrome? Well, I can't see everyone's hands, but my guess is that most people's hands went up, because here's the little secret is that like everyone is kind of just making up as they go along, you know, like at least like once you have some experience, then you have that to share. But if you're getting bigger and better experiences, the only way to do that is by being willing to take on something that you don't know how to do just quite yet, you know? So I've heard from a lot of young people, I'm not talking about Braden, but just like young people around this organization and past positions I've held, that, you know, people feel a bit of imposter syndrome, and that's hard to deal with. But that's something that's part of that process. You have to experience some of it. And Braden, something you said really stuck with me. Like you said about doing this is not just about you, but like to help youth in the future. Am I paraphrasing? I kind of got that right, that, you know, you're going to help people that come after you. And that's bigger than you know, because it might apply to like specific instances or, you know, things you've gone through that you're talking to, but also just having a young person being in a position like this, like you're erasing imposter syndrome, not just for you, but for the next person. When you age out of this, the next person who might be coming from your community, might look like you, might sound like you, might have your same interests, whatever, they're going to feel a little less imposter syndrome because, oh, well, Braden did this, you know? So anyways, I don't think I answered your question there, Colleen, but those are just some things that come to mind when it comes to what does genuine co-design look like. The short version of that would be, the Reader's Digest version would be, it's not really cut and dry. Like it can be a bit messy, but you just have to always make sure you're keeping clients and staff safe. And also you need to be willing to have it be a bit messy after that, because sometimes you got to like get through the mess to get to the other side. So yeah.
You know, you absolutely answered it. And that's a really beautiful summary, I think. And it actually really helps, because I know I can relate and resonate to when you're going through it and you're feeling like, I think we're onto something, but we're working through and finding our way. And just kind of to summarize, like you said, we've had a few conversations just through this series, about youth engagement, but more broadly, I mean, in this particular topic, more broadly on lived experience, but recognizing the expertise that people have and then compensating for that expertise, right? And this is a conversation that folks have in university spaces a lot is, community members are experts as well, right? And so recognizing that Braden does have expertise and deserves to be compensated, and other folks that have that lived experience do as well. And then just putting the value there as well, right? And genuine engagement, where those perspectives and that expertise is not just heard, but also adapted into practice. And I think that's where John Howard has done a really brilliant job at that. So I think, again, it's worth recognizing as well. So I think at this time, Braden, do you have anything else that you want to add after hearing what Sean said?
Um, just a few things. The questions it says, what does co-design look like to you? Co-design to me, it just looks like a group of people with who have similar experiences and a common interest, come together and build a system that aims for solutions or effective results in the end, which is kind of what we're doing at John Howard. It's, you know, positive impact and a lot of negative things that are going on that people don't really discuss. Um, and that's pretty much. Oh, how do you think nonprofits can support individuals? That's another thing. A nonprofit community supporting individual like myself, could like in the past, it could have helped me, like pushed me to do better. Like John Howard, it did help me, and it pushed me to do a lot better and get involved in like certain things, like schooling. Like for example, I'm in roofing school now because all I needed was a little push. um Makes the individual feel a lot less hopeless. It makes them just want to do better. It helps a lot. But yeah, that's it. That's all.
Nice. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to have the opportunity to hear from you and learn from you today. Um, so yeah, so in terms of next steps, what we hope to do is create some breakout rooms for about 15 minutes where folks could talk about programs that they are working on in their organizations, where they could or have do co-design or include young people or folks with lived experience related to the work that they're doing, so that we can give people the opportunity to chat about, what has that looked like for you? What would you like it to look like? What went really well? What didn't go well? And then we can come back and kind of share. And then Braden and Sean could also kind of add some advice and perspectives on that as well. So I'm just going to ask everyone to bear with me very briefly as I work on opening up those rooms. I know some people leave at this point because they can't can't do the rooms, which is totally fine. I know not everybody is kind of in a space where they can do it. So just 1 second. So I'm just going to open up the rooms right now, and I'll bring us back in about 15 minutes.
There you go, Ling.
Hi, everyone. Hey, welcome back, everyone. And thanks again for your time and participation. And I'd love to just, before we wrap up the session and then perhaps hand it back to Sean and Braden for some last remarks, just ask if anyone wants to share some of the conversations from their group sessions or just a few words that were shared in that space. Go ahead.
Is that me?
Oh, if you want to, or anyone, yeah, doesn't have to be you.
No, if someone else wants to go, please go first. But I have some
Yeah.
exciting stuff.
Sure.
Okay, well, here in Noah, this is like an intersection with no stop signs. No one knows who to go first. I was in group 2 with Carrie, who's just here on her own accord. So thanks for that, Carrie. Lynn from Food for Learning, Jordan from Nature Sask, myself, Terry from Berry Free Sask, and the Sask Council for International Cooperation, sorry, and your Donna, sorry if I'm saying your name wrong. And yeah, we I think we could have talked for hours. 2 exciting things that I took away. Lynn with Food for Learning is about to be affected by the new federal money that the province hasn't cut a deal on yet, and they really need to do that. But the new federal money for food in schools, there's a new investment hopefully coming about making sure kids have adequate nutrition and calories at school to learn. She was saying that they do a survey once in a while. They will give the kids a survey, just say what do you like, what don't you like, and again, it probably doesn't necessarily really change the course of the ship in a big way, but what a nice little touch to give kids some ownership over something that's not just them getting something in here, eat your vegetables, but having the chance to sort of some engagement, some empowerment, some ownership over what the program looks like. So I thought that was great. And then Carrie mentioned something that's new to me. Carrie, I'm not sure if it was your own example or someone you know that had been in the hospital in Saskatoon, where she said that you're actually given a menu to choose between a few different meals, which again, it doesn't, one of those little tweaks that probably doesn't cost the hospital like maybe anything more because they still have to make the same amount of food, right? But just like a little bit of ownership to make sure people, I don't know, just what a nice little touch, And
right.
I imagine, yeah, please.
It was at the Royal University Hospital in Saskatoon.
Great.
Yeah. And Regina just serves food to everyone, but Saskatoon actually gave you a choice.
Excellent.
Well, I think that's such a great example of like simple, like participant driven or community engaged, or maybe community engaged is too broad, but like co-designed in some way, right? Like a very simple act, but that has a huge impact for the folks that they're serving, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing. Does anyone else from the other group want to share? I see our friends from Seniors University group here, so it's great to see you folks again. Yeah. Does anyone have anything from that group that want to share?
Well, I guess I'll share a little bit. We were talking about how do we find out who we're not serving well, and also how do we build trust? Both difficult questions, and there was some great examples in how we should do that.
Mm-hmm.
Dawn, anything else to add?
Oh, sorry, Dawn, you're on mute.
No, I agree, Penny. Those were the 2 core questions that I think we found that need answers. We need answers to. So, and we're getting some good feedback here in the group.
Nice, that's great. And I'll I'll just highlight the partnership that we had with Seniors University Group in one of our nonprofit sector leadership and innovation courses, where we actually had some students doing some stakeholder engagement for Seniors University Group. So that was really exciting. And just an idea for the folks on the call, like I know we've partnered with a lot of your organizations, but if there are ever, you know, ideas that come from these conversations where you would like some support, we do teach in program planning and evaluation, for example. So that's easily something that we could work on with students. And I suppose that's our way of co-designing as well, is including partnerships like this to help students be able to give back to the nonprofit sector through their coursework. But yeah, is there any other, I suppose, final thoughts or additions that you might like to add, Braden or Sean, before we kind of sign off and go on the rest of our days?
If I may say something, Colleen,
Please.
I one of the things that we do is provide meals for a high school. And I think the idea of asking them to choose is a great one that I think we are going to implement, because so far they have a cook and the cook decides what is going to be eaten that week. So it will be very interesting to have the kids have input into what they want to eat. So thank you very much for that suggestion from the hospital.
Yeah, of
I
course.
don't remember who made that, but that is it just struck me as, wow, that is something that we should do. That is neat. Thank you.
Absolutely. Good. And yeah, so I suppose maybe I'll pass it over to Sean and Braden to share any final remarks, unless anyone else wants to add something. But if not, I think the last word can go to them.
Sure. After you, Braden, I have a closing thought, but if you have anything after you, sir.
I just want to say, thank you for having me today. I like talking and sharing my experiences and just, giving you guys my input on, just what I think would help benefit everybody. But yeah, go ahead, Sean.
Cool. I'll just say parting thoughts that, and this is easier said than done, but just try to rethink what mistakes look like. Again, that we have an onus, in the nonprofit sector, in your home life, wherever, that there's some mistakes that are serious mistakes. So you have to recognize those serious mistakes. Again, making sure that clients are safe, that staff are safe, that money's accounted for, all those things. Be very particular about those. But there's other things that you should, if you're making no mistakes, you're not doing the most you can do for your mandate. So I think of that like about co-design, but also think about like how that plays out a lot is around hiring. There's a lot of wrong ways to hire, but I think lots of organizations are scared to hire certain demographics of people. To be honest, some organizations don't hire young people. Some organizations don't hire old people. Some organizations don't offer equal opportunity for new Canadians or for Indigenous communities. And part of what drives that, I think, honestly, is that people are so afraid of it not working out that they don't even try. And the reality is that sometimes it might not work out, but part of getting to where we want to be in society is you have to sometimes take that risk. And again, let people make mistakes to learn from them, whether that's a youth co-design table or an organization that just doesn't have a good representation of Indigenous people or new Canadians or women or men or like whatever demographics you're missing. Think about that and think about how you might take the right risks on people. I think that would be my closing thought. And again, easy to say, hard to do, but I think a big part of what our society is gonna like that's where the real change happens, is how we engage with each other. So just that's my parting thoughts. So thank you.
No, absolutely. I really appreciate that. And I know I've learned so much from you folks. And I think like John Howard is a great example, like I said, of local leadership and doing this work really, really well. And I'm thankful for you, Sean, and your expertise, and Braden for you and your expertise, and for both of your willingness to serve our communities to make them better. And I think for me, I've really learned that yeah, like taking that risk, although it might feel challenging, but listening to the folks that we're serving so that we can build meaningful programs that are going to help and support them in a way that is kind of directed by the folks that are experiencing, whether it's food security or education or poverty or justice, whatever the work is that we're doing, or even serving seniors in learning and education. I think there's ways that we can kind of take that lived expertise, highlight it, give those folks the opportunities to shine and to share. And I think the outcomes are worth it, even if it, ends up, like Sean said, sometimes it doesn't work out perfectly, but there's always learning that comes from that as well. So yeah, and I just want to thank you all for being here and for being part of this community. And again, we're really thankful for the opportunity to offer this series as part of Luther College's MBSSN in partnership with the South Saskatchewan Community Foundation. At the MBSSN, our mandate is to support a thriving nonprofit and voluntary sector through learning opportunities like this. And we love to be able to highlight local work like John Howard and others. So if you ever have an idea or a session that would be really valuable to your organization, I would welcome you to reach out to me and to share it, because again, we want it to be community driven. So we want to be responsive to the needs of the sector, particularly in this learning space, and want to provide learning opportunities that are going to support your work and what you're doing. And like I said, we have our certificate in nonprofit sector leadership. So if your organization could benefit from support either from students, or if there's interest within your space in learning more about particular topics in nonprofit leadership, like governance or program planning or fundraising, that's something that we offer at Luther College at the University of Regina. So yes, without further ado, I just again want to say thank you to Sean and Braden for their time today and for sharing, and for all of you for being here with us. And I wish you the very best day.
Great.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, y'all.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great session. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Lynn.
See you soon.
Thanks, Cameron.
All right, have a good day.
Thanks, Braden.